Hello, Internet, and thank you for joining me around this particular. So recently I heard that Madam Web was coming out, and I thought that this would be the absolute perfect time to take a look back about a year at a little film called Morbius. As soon as Morbius came out, I got told by critics on the internet, friends and family that I knew, and a particularly chatty vagrant that I found in a Wendy's dumpster that the movie was absolute garbage. And after watching it for myself almost a year later, I have to say that they are 100% correct. It's not good. It's a bad movie. Bad. But to my surprise, it's actually bad in a fairly interesting way, and so I felt compelled to talk about it. Because you see, dear viewer, I actually really like Jared Leto. Even though this film in particular is kind of a stab into my heart, and everything about Suicide Squad is awful and made worse by Jared Leto's presence in it. Dear God, do I hate Suicide Squad. But aside from these, he really hasn't done an offensive portrayal of a character. I mean, he was awesome in Lord of War, he was incredible in Requiem for a Dream, he's been in tons of great movies. Hell, Dallas Buyers Club, he was in that, he was awesome. He was in Blade Runner 2049, and he was awesome. But for some reason, he chooses to do these movies that just make me want to hate him. I want to hate him a lot more than I do. I can't help but love him, but I hate him. So it's actually a coincidence that Jared Leto shares this exact trait with Spider-Man from '94, the animated series. This came out when I was a kid, and when I was a kid, I loved it. I waited around every Saturday morning, because I didn't have cable, to watch Spider-Man '94. I loved it as a kid, but when it came to rewatching it, when it came to Disney Plus and watching it on DVD and all of that, rewatching it is absolute torture. It's really all over the place. The 3D effects look awful, and most of this series is poorly performed, poorly animated. Just everything about it is terrible, but I can't help but love it because I loved it when I was a kid. So my nostalgia for it blinds me to all of its flaws. And I bring up Spider-Man '94 because that's where I know Morbius from. He was Michael Morbius in the show. He sort of shows up out of nowhere. I think he's from Transylvania even. And he steals Felicia Harding from Spider-Man, Peter Parker. And I had to look that up because old Peter Parker used to have like a personality, and there actually used to be characters in Spider-Man. You kids wouldn't get it. It's fine. But I mean, that was my history with the character. I really didn't have any attachment to this character. So when the movie came out, it really didn't matter to me. I wasn't really rushing out to see it no matter what. But then Madam Web's coming out, so I was like, hey, you know what? Let's go back and watch this. And so I took a look at it. To give a brief rundown of Morbius the movie, Michael Morbius is born. He's got pretty shitty blood. He has some disease that's killing him. It's really indescript, and I don't remember the movie saying what it specifically was, but he finds a kid that might be named Lucius, might be named Milo. It's all very confusing. But anyway, they grow up together and find out that Michael's really smart, even though he doesn't really do anything smart. He does like one thing with this machine that's supposed to be pumping blood into his friend, but the way he fixes it would not work. Just trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Wouldn't work. That spring's totally not going to hold the load that is within that machine. Anyway, aside from all that, Michael grows up. He's super smart. He's got PhDs, and I think at some point I was led to believe that Jared Leto is supposed to be playing a 20-something Michael Morbius. Jared, you can't play 20 anymore, dude. I'm sorry. I hate to be the one that tells you this, but you ain't playing 20 no more. It's out of the cards. We should have gone for like maybe at late 30s, early 40s. You don't look it, is what I'm saying. You can't pull off early 20s. So anyway, Michael Morbius grows up. He ends up in a lab with a girl, and I think we got a name halfway through the movie with girl's name, but I'm just going to keep calling her Girl because that's all she really does in the movie. However, Michael and Girl come up with fake blood that they can use for him to help him live, but he can't really like survive indefinitely with the fake blood. So they are still trying to find a cure for him. And for some reason, that leads them to a big boat that's in the trailer. And then on the big boat, he extracts blood from the bats that he gets at the beginning of the movie that is really confusing. I'll get to this later because the movie is edited like garbage. But anyway, he gets on the boat. He makes a cure for himself to cure his disease and the disease that his friend has because they both have the same disease. But he gets the cure. The cure turns him into a vampire. And then he doesn't want to give the cure to the friend because he's like, no, cure's going to make you a vampire. Friend is like, I don't care. And then he, just takes the cure anyway, becomes a vampire. Now we got to stop the other vampire with the first vampire, with Jared Leto vampire. Jared Leto vampire has to kill Doctor Who vampire. I don't actually know that Matt Smith played Doctor Who because I'm not a Doctor Who fan, but he looks a lot like Doctor Who. So I'm going to call him Doctor Who vampire from now on. And that's all that really happens in this movie. At the very end, Doctor Who vampire kills the doctor that is trying to help both Morbius and Doctor Who vampire from like childhood and all that. Doctor Who vampire kills him, but then he also kills Doctor Lady that doesn't get a name until halfway through, and I couldn't bother to remember. But he kills both those people, and then Jared Leto vampire gets mad and he's got to do a big dumb CGI action scene. And then the movie ends. Literally, it just stops. This is really the problem with the whole movie. It's edited super weird. It's super confusing because things will be happening within the same scene, but they're talking like they've had a conversation for the last 2 hours, but they're trying to edit around it and they're trying to condense it down into about 15 minutes. And it makes for a really weird experience watching the movie back. Kind of like one of my videos. It's honestly like trying to be inside my head for longer than 2 seconds. So it's really like off the wall. You get a lot of things that just don't make sense and they don't seem to line up. Like people are talking at each other, not to each other, the entire movie. It kind of screams to me that there were like 20 different versions of this movie going on inside the writers' heads, because I do believe that this mostly boils down to writing. The way that it is written, we are supposed to connect certain things that just you shouldn't have to work this hard for this kind of movie. And that's why when everyone came out and said that it was bad, I feel like they just failed to mention this. They failed to mention that it's just a bad story told poorly. Nowhere better is it demonstrated that this was just a convoluted mess of nothing than with the Doctor Who vampire character. Like in the very beginning of the movie, when they're still kids, they're in like this sick kid orphanage thing. And I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like a hospital because it doesn't look like a hospital, but they're both there. They're both sick. That's how they meet each other and bond. And when they first show up, when they first meet, they're told that the Doctor Who vampire character's name is Lucian. That's what I wrote down in my notes. That his name is Lucian, but Jared Leto vampire is calling him Milo. And the reason he's calling him Milo is because essentially this disease is supposed to be super like deadly. These kids are supposed to be dying from this a lot. And the first kid was named Milo, and so he's just called every subsequent kid, because they don't survive very long, Milo. And that's supposed to mean something, because at some point, the doctor that is in charge of these two kids that ends up getting killed by Doctor Who vampire later on in the story, he ends up calling him Milo. And it's super distracting, because there's never a point where you're told that this character is taking this moniker of Milo as, you know, a term of endearment or a badge of honor, something like that. You never get that impression. There's never any dialogue to explain it. And no one ever says or does anything that really indicates that we're supposed to think of the Milo moniker as something other than a name. And honestly, like, is it supposed to be empowering? Because listen, your name's not Milo anymore. Your name is Doctor Who Vampire, because I'm the Ice King up in this bitch and I just renamed you. The other thing I don't remember anybody complaining about at the time, or at least putting a bunch of emphasis on it, is just the aesthetic of the movie. Like, overall, the look of the movie stays consistent throughout the entire thing. It's trying to be essentially an underworld or early Daredevil, or, you know, this dark, gritty universe. I feel like it's trying to do that, but it's made in 2022, so we are used to a better version of this story that you're trying to tell, or at least we're conditioned by a lot of different Marvel movies to have like a grander idea of what these characters can be. So the movie really just falls flat from an aesthetic point of view, because it doesn't really pull off the tone that its visuals would have us want. And the visual effects really actually look good. It looks like a good movie, quote unquote. It's just that it's stupid. And what I'm really trying to get at here is that it's art, but it's stupid art. And you're playing it very straight. You're trying to elicit an emotion from us that just can never be, because it's so stupid. It's a clown trying to make us feel sad by slipping on a banana peel. But what I found fascinating while watching this movie is that everyone trashed it for, you know, being stupid, and the dialogue being horrible, and the directing being horrible, and the script being horrible. But what struck me, and what made me want to make this video in particular, was that while I was watching this movie, I got the sense that there was some passion in it. I think that the writers, and Jared Leto in particular, really wanted to make this Morbius movie. This was the exact movie that they wanted to make. Honestly, it reminded me of a saying that I believe I read on the internet somewhere, that bad things happen for a reason. Sometimes those reasons are you're stupid and you lack talent. And I could not get that out of my head while I was watching this film. And this is the part of the rant where I want to kind of go into a side rant here, because, again, going back to my previous point that Jared Leto and the writers of this film, they are very passionate about this film, obviously. They really wanted to make this film, but they didn't have a team behind them that cared. And this makes me think of the current Marvel movies. The current Marvel projects all seem to hire on people that do not care, and they lack the competency to make good things. There's tons of passionate people that want to make Marvel movies, but they don't get a chance for one reason or another. Really, if you look at the current crop of movies and projects like Echo, the most recent Thor, the Marvels, it seems like everyone involved in those, the writers, the director, even most of the actors, don't want to be involved with these movies. And I have to ask the question of why. Honestly, it really reminds me of Ghostbusters 2016. The story that I heard about Ghostbusters 2016, which there's a lot of stuff to talk about with Ghostbusters 2016, but the story that I heard and the most relevant point to what I want to get across is that in the making of Ghostbusters 2016, whoever was in charge of Sony at the time, I think her name was Susan or something. Anyway, she decided that she really wanted Paul Feig to make the next Ghostbusters movie. I don't know why she specifically wanted Paul Feig, but she wanted Paul Feig more than anything in the world. And so she emailed the offer, and Paul Feig said, I don't really have an idea. I don't really want to make a Ghostbusters movie. I don't think it's my thing. And she sent him something back saying, no, it'll be great. You can do it. You can do it. And just do it. And he said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But then she said, you can do whatever you want with it. It's a blank check. You just have to call it Ghostbusters. And so they probably paid him a ton of money. I don't have any evidence for that, but they probably paid him a ton of money to come on and write the Ghostbusters 2016 that did come out. And everyone hated it. And everyone hated it not because it starred women or had Paul Feig as a director or even had whatever her face was as the head of Sony at the time, because it wasn't a Ghostbusters movie. It was a movie wearing the skin of Ghostbusters. And that's what people hate about all of these movies. Looking at all of those movies that I mentioned before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we can see that they don't really want to be Marvel movies. Everything that I've seen about Echo is just that it doesn't want to be a Marvel property. It doesn't want to be a comic book movie. It wants to be about everything but comic books. That's why people generally don't love these shows and movies and all these other properties. And really, Morbius kind of culminates and proves this, because I don't feel like it wanted to be a Morbius movie. It wanted to be a vampire movie. Even though I think Jared Leto wanted it to be a Morbius movie, I believe that the two writers wanted it to be a Morbius movie, but I don't think anyone else involved in this wanted it to be a Morbius movie. I think they wanted to make a vampire movie, and then they just slapped Morbius on top of it. The reason I feel that way, and I feel like a lot of people feel this way, is because they don't use any of the comic book stuff, or even the animated show stuff, or even previous movie stuff. Using Morbius as an example here, the Morbius I know from the 94 show, he drank blood through his hands. That was like a huge defining thing, because I think it was a 90s censorship thing, honestly, that they couldn't show him like sinking his fangs into somebody's neck. But that became like a hallmark for the character, as far as I know. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but in the movie, he just keeps biting people. You know, he's draining people the normal vampire way, the classic vampire way. And really, that's not fun. That's just another vampire movie. We've got tons of vampire movies, but we don't have a movie where a weird looking dude just goes up and grabs people and can drink their blood that way. I feel like Hollywood in itself really is averse to this sort of different ideas that come up in comic books, because they want to go with what is going to have the widest appeal. And this goes back to what I was talking about in my Has Been Hotel review, C-pinned thing here. But what we really need to be doing is focusing in on a certain audience. I feel like in the age of the internet, we're able to cater content to people. Now, it's not all going to be billion-dollar content. You're not going to make $1 billion off of Morbius, but you could probably throw together like a $2 to $5 million movie that, you know, or maybe even a mini series, like just make it like 4 episodes and see how it goes. And you can make something out of that concept and just say, here's this for the Morbius fans. You only get 4 episodes, but hey, 4 episodes might be better than nothing. as opposed to what we get now, which is, this watered down kind of garbage that doesn't appeal to the hardcore fans because they want to see the characters that they've read about come to life on the screen, and it doesn't appeal to the rest of the audience that isn't all about the comics because they don't want to watch a comic book movie. And I would say that the early MCU really struck a great balance between having enough of the comic books in there, or at least enough nods to the comic books to make it novel for the comic book fans. But it also focused on telling a good story. And I will say this until I am blue in the face. A good story told well will always appeal to people. But to summarize everything that I've been saying throughout this whole video, I just want to come out and say that I feel like we are in a weird point in movie history. Like me, you, everyone in the movie viewing audience is in a weird spot because we keep getting these movies that feel like I should love them, that we should love them as the comic book, as the quote unquote nerdy audience we should love. But they're made by people that aren't passionate about the same thing. And it's really easy to tell that they don't care. So why should we? Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for coming to these videos. I've only made 2 at this point, and I'm hoping to get better. My visuals aren't going to be very great for this one. I'm currently just recording this, and I'm trying to break up my recordings and do a couple of other things. But if you guys could, if you like my videos, just go ahead and leave me a like. If you want to leave me a comment, that's supposed to help me in the algorithm, or at least that's what every other YouTuber says. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.